We need to talk about JHope saying that he was in pain and shaking. A bit of an update here on his little accident. We have Jin using a gun and people talking about him in a war. And then we have Jung Kook addressing the members and that being controversial. So hey dumplings, it's Dave Desai. Hater or not, make sure you're subscribed with the notification bell on. Grab your dumplings, hey Sling Mug merch, and let's go. If you are unaware, recently JHope welcomed us into the new year and got into a little bit of an injury. He was on the Rockin' Eve stage in Times Square. He stepped down into the main part of the stage and then he accidentally slipped and he fell, but people were able to catch him. And he caught himself too by holding onto the railing. I wasn't even entirely sure how he fell, as it ended up resulting in his watch unbuckling. I mean, that must have been some fall, right? He made a reaction that seemed like it hurt, but ultimately it seemed like it was okay. He didn't say much about it, and the accident happened during the rehearsal, so if there was really any big deal or big issue and an injury, then he would have not been able to perform on the main stage during the live broadcast. But JHope did, and he was great. I do react to this performance on Patreon. There is currently a limited $1 tier that is open. If you want to join me there in fangirling over this, I will link that in the description, and I hope to see you there. It was reported by some news sites that apparently JHope talked about this. I didn't know if he spoke about it during rehearsal and after that specific song was done, or during his live stream that he did right after the show. Because if you're a New Yorker, then you probably actually have never seen the ball drop in Times Square in person, because so many New Yorkers tried to avoid Times Square. So I wasn't there, and obviously I'm assuming the rehearsals were not broadcasted on TV. JHope also went on Weverse to do his live stream after the show, and it was reported that he mentioned it there, but I wasn't able to catch it. I have yet to watch it as of recording. They didn't have subs yet, but there might be some available on YouTube. But JHope apparently addressed the slip and confirmed that the issue was because of the rain and it was slippery. And then he confirmed that everything was fine. He wasn't hurt, there wasn't any issues there except for the fact that the weather was really bad. And there should definitely be precautions for this. If you're in Times Square around like a few weeks before the show happens, you'll start to see people set up. They'll build this stage every year and it's right in the middle of Times Square. The issue I have with this stage is that it's New York. New York gets snow, sunshine, rain, hail, and the desert weather all in one day. And especially for a day like in December, you can expect things like snow and rain. So there needs to be protection for this, maybe like an overhead shade thing or something to protect the floor, the equipment, and the artist. Stuff like this and accidents like this are so avoidable, yet they still manage to not avoid it. JHope and many artists have had problems with the staging and sound design of that stage. And this is one of the biggest shows of the year. I would say that they tend to draw in one of the biggest audiences every year, as everyone opens the TV to watch the ball drop. Mariah Carey a couple years ago had mentioned that her in-ears would not work or something like that, so when she performed, she actually just didn't sing. So all you could hear was the backing vocals and just her moving around. There's so many reasons why. You can go about what she did and say she's lazy, but if you can't hear yourself, you'll really sound bad, and then the news sites will all then say you're a bad singer. JHope had a similar issue apparently that night. He said that he could not really hear himself, and thus he felt like his voice might have been really shaky. I guess if you're a vocalist, you'd be able to tell, but I could not. He sounded the same as the track to me, no shaking. JHope, I feel, did a really great job, and if he really couldn't hear himself that much, but he still sounded that good, that's really impressive, because he did sound good. I love watching the Hyung lines start to promote and show how professional they are. It really does go to show that if you're famous and successful, there is a reason why, and they're successful because they are very good and know how to manage any situation. I would say most performances, some minor things do go wrong, but if you know how to manage that, you are a pro. I think it's tougher for the younger members because they have to overly prove themselves. You're already expected to be the weakest link due to your age, and if you actually are, then that's not good. Jung Kook recently talked about how BTS members were the ones that raised him. This is likely implying how you would raise your own kid. Give them advice, learn things from them, and just grow and mature with them. Jung Kook joined BTS when he was 14 years old, like very young, and you don't know everything yet, and you definitely have not fully developed your skills. However, something as sweet and non-problematic of a thing to say can somehow be controversial in the eyes of some people in the fandom. There's this narrative going around that Jung Kook looks up to his older members. Not really a narrative, but just the truth. And this is controversial because people who like just Jung Kook and not the other members will come out to say that that is not true and that the fandom needs to stop saying this. Because Jung Kook is his own person, I actually don't understand why this is controversial. And then other Others were saying to stop this because he's 26 and too old to be saying this "they raised me" stuff, which makes no sense because you can be 80 and still say "who raised you." It's raised, past tense, not raising. And this idea that these people hate the other members doesn't make sense because Jung Kook would obviously not like you if you hate the other members. The other members are his family and he really loves them. And especially when Jung Kook was between the ages of 14 to 19, you are very impressionable at that age. You tend to mimic and mirror the people around you because at that age you still don't know 100% what is acceptable behavior and what isn't. You might have an idea like "I shouldn't be mean," but you may not understand how to act in a certain situation or even in a more difficult situation, what you should do. And that doesn't mean you're dumb for all the younger folks watching, it's just lack of experience, and you never stop learning, by the way. But going back, specifically Jung Kook's care, of course he is going to learn the most from Jin, JHope, RM, and Suga, and his older members, and his younger members were probably less like parents and more like friends that influenced him too. The actual truth about Jin and all the older members is that they did raise Jung Kook. JHope even said in a video too, when he was doing a tour of the museum, he was like, "I raised him." I can only imagine all the members aren't necessarily worried about Jin, but more so wondering and hoping that he is happy. There's been a lot of photos and news coverage lately of Jin at the camp, and I think most armies are glad because we want to know and see that he is okay. However, this is a bit controversial because some people think that the photos we have seen of Jin at the camp are taken by stalkers without the permission of Hybe or Jin. When I tend to see something in the fandom, when someone says something so ridiculous and definitive, I tend to rethink and want to look into it because things are rarely that black and white and that definitive. So just a quick disclaimer, news sites probably would not be allowed in the camp just to snap photos without permission, and currently Jin is with the military, not Hybe. So if the military is allowing media and releasing photos themselves, then that is totally fine to look at and consume. There were some new photos that were released that were a bit controversial. Jin was seen in a photo lining up with the other soldiers and saluting. It was also believed that there was a photo of Jin learning how to shoot a sniper or something. This is scary. I think in Korea it's obviously different and people are different, but if every person in America were forced to go to the military and learn how to use a gun, then every man in America would know how to use a gun. And that might be bad because of the school shooters. So that's pretty interesting thought. But anyway, back to Jin. There was some concern over Jin being in the military now because of the ongoing tension between North Korea and South Korea. It seems to be an issue. And then people were saying that Jin might go to war. So seeing him use a gun seems to be a concern among the fandom. There's been many people online who have been wishing for Jin to go to war to get hurt. And that's really scary and kind of disgusting that people have these wishes. I can't believe you can wish these terrible things on another human, let alone a celebrity that has literally never interacted with you. And I don't believe Jin will be going to war. I believe he will be fine, and I don't think the tension between the North and the South will result in anything really bad right now. I also believe Jin would be the best fighter. He would for sure win, although I definitely hope he does not have to fight and kill people. The photos that were snapped and posted by news were not an indication of a war or anything like that. They simply were just photos showing how to use a gun, which is obviously all a part of training. He is just doing what he needs to do, and it's actually really cool for him to learn a skill that he literally would never know being a singer. There would be no need for him to ever use a gun, right? Let me know what you think. Make sure you check out my Patreon for more videos, a link down below. Thanks for this lovely comment right here. Love you. Bye.